Good afternoon, Comp 1. I greet you joyfully on a spring day. Guinea hens are making a little noise over there, but it is, after all, spring. Today I have a little word that I want to teach you. You might not know it. The word is defenestration. It's kind of an old-timey word, fancy word. It means to be thrown out a window, flung out a window. If you ever find yourself being thrown out a window, you can say, whoa, I'm being defenestrated. This is on my mind because the subject of the next essay is the mode of classification. I'm going to invite you in the next week and a half to rhetorically put something in a classification, and that makes me think about all kinds of things. First and foremost among them is a rhetorician that I feel a great kinship with. He's a man named Petrus Ramus. He was a Frenchman, and he lived in Paris in the 1500s. And he's famous for all kinds of things. He's famous for being a genius. He taught at the University of Paris, I think with just a bachelor's degree. He never took a doctorate degree. He was just so smart they had to give him a piece of chalk. He was famous too for pushing back in some dramatic ways against an intellectual movement called scholasticism. And he's famous too for the way he met his end. Rhetoricians, as I've told you before, meet some pretty grisly deaths. And Petrus Ramus, quite famously, one afternoon engaged with a debate with another professor, and he creamed him. Took him out intellectually. And that evening, the other professor's students were so incited to riot that they ran up to the top of the dormitory that Petrus Ramus lived in. It was 5 floors up at the University of Paris, and they defenestrated him. They threw him out a window. When I tell this story at Central Lakes College, on the second floor, I tell it rather uneasily. When I tell it on the first floor, I feel pretty comfortable. I tell CLC students, hey, go ahead, defenestrate me, throw me out that window. I'll just lay on the ground for a little while and then come back in and start talking again. But the thing that, in addition to that Petrus Ramus is really famous for is his obsession with classification. He really had this idea that what you should do is take any subject, any idea, and divide it up, along the lines of dichotomies. And if you pick up any of his books, you'll see these funky diagrams, right, where he just starts with the general and just starts parsing things left and right into classifications, into divisions. He had the idea that if you could start with a big general idea, you could get to a point where you could classify and classify and classify and get it down to its most specific essence. In some senses, that's what you're going to do with the next paper. And I've got a couple of ways of inviting you to think about it. Now, the reason why I use the toy, was for comic relief, but I also want to bring to this little day, to this lesson, this humble lesson, sort of the residual ideas of the way I used to teach this. I used to do a couple of things in my old classrooms. I did this at my old high school. I did this at St. Cloud State, and I've even done it at Central Lakes College. A couple of ways of trying to convince students that classifying is just a natural thing. You're able to do it, whether you're aware of it or not. You could think of us, tens of thousands of years ago, maybe living here in central Minnesota. You had to be able to classify in order to survive. Okay, we can just start with food. If you were walking in the woods with a friend one day, and they ate some raspberries, and it kept them going, you would say, hey, I think I'm going to enjoy those raspberries too. On another day, walking with the same friend, if that person perhaps ate late in the fall the bright red fruit of one of our only native green flower called the Jack in the Pulpit. It's blaze red in the fall. It looks like something you could eat. It's completely poisonous. And if that happened that day and you saw your friend die a rather horrible neurological death, you'd probably conclude I really shouldn't eat that berry again. Classification was a survival tactic, a strategy. And I used to do in my old classroom is bring in a bag, like a brown paper bag, and I would have a variety of things in it. And I would take out toys, one at a time, and I would also have some different kinds of food in there, maybe an orange, maybe an apple, maybe a pear. And I remember bringing in tools too, the hammer, the screwdriver, the small saw. And students quite easily could intellectually decide which pile each thing would go into. And then, of course, near the end of the demonstration, I would take out something just cacophonous, like a shoe or something that didn't go with any of the categories, with any of the classifications. the survival story with food and the business with toys was a way in to the idea. So what you're going to do in the next week and a half or so is take a look at the world around you and the things that you know and the things that you understand. And I'd like to invite you to put whatever topic you choose into a series of classifications and subcategories. And what I want to do is give you some strategies for doing this. We talked about it real hastily in another video, I think the one we shot in the basement of the Alcuin Library at St. John's University. But here we're going to take those strategies that are very scientific in nature, if that's the way your head is geared, and we're going to vamp them up into a full-blown paper. It's as old as the hills. It's one of those papers that makes me feel like I should be a school marm, you know, with the flower print dress and the beehive hairdo. I mean, it's that old. It's as old as these hills. In fact, it goes all the way back to Aristotle. Now, what's kind of neat about this paper is that you don't have to grope your way up that blind alley, which is the way most people write papers. I'm going to give you a series of strategies that you can use, and what you can do, you can just sort of plug them in, and the paper will write itself once you get your topic. The first of these things is etymology. We've talked about this before. I love etymologies. I love the idea that you can take a word and trace it back to where it comes from. We've been here before. What I'm sitting before is something I love so much, my little house where I live with my wife and family. Well, that comes from, I believe, an Anglo-Saxon word, or Middle English at the very latest. Hos. You might know that the asphalt that we drive around in our cars and trucks comes from the Greek god of pitch, asphaltos. And my own name has an origin. Maybe yours does too. I think my name in Middle English back in Chaucer's time, when it was spelled properly, Geoffrey, meant God's peace. I'm happy about that. Fun thing about this paper, you don't have to find the origin of whatever it is you're writing about. Here, I'm encouraging you to be a little bit creative. Take the etymology and just make it as official sounding as possible, but just make it up. Totally make it up. Make up the root word, whatever Latin or Greek or Sumerian word it comes from. Just go for it. Have a little bit of fun with the etymology. You might want to give me the real one if you can trace it down, but have some fun. Make it up. Fool me. I've seen some that were so good across the year, from 16-year-olds, that I went up to them and said, hey, I had no idea that's where that word came from. And then, you got the genius looking up and saying, well, you know what? You told me to make it up, remember? Etymology is a very good thing to get going with in your first paragraph. Another strategy, also something we talked about in the basement of the Alcuin, is negation. Negation is the means by which you say what something is not. Okay, asphalt is not concrete. Concrete is not asphalt. In the saying what something is not, you are probably going to take some steps towards saying what it is. Okay, this is a G.I. Joe doll, and he's okay after being defenestrated. This is not a Ken doll, okay? If Barbie's boyfriend Ken shows up on a battlefield unarmed wearing a pale blue Nehru leisure suit, that's a problem. It's another kind of problem if G.I. Joe shows up at Barbie's house on a Friday night shirtless with a gas-operated assault rifle. Maybe that's her scene, maybe not. They're different kinds of toys, okay? They're different kinds of toys. They serve different purposes. Kids play with G.I. Joe differently than they play with, Ken. That's negation. Examples are great. Aristotle says that you have to be able to prove a point, achieve a proof through examples or enthymemes. So give me examples of what you're talking about. We can compare and contrast when we're classifying. Although, as I've said before, when we engage in a pretty complicated intellectual mode called comparison and contrast, almost inevitably, we are looking for distinctions. We're looking for differences. You might tell me the function or the purpose of whatever it is you're talking about. You might describe it extensively. That's pretty important. Help me understand what it is you're talking about. And ultimately, you might try to get yourself, divided down to the real point of what you're trying to talk about. What's the meaning? Why do you find whatever you're classifying to be important? Now, I've taught this paper for years. If you've got any questions, call me or write me, like many of you are when you need help. I never tire of reading these papers. They achieve. I get so distracted. There's my dog. They fulfill sort of their own classification, pattern-wise, and I've seen it for years. I've seen students write about different kinds of music. I've seen students write about different kinds of referees regarding whatever sport they're in. I've seen students classify types of parents, an attentive parent, over controlling parent, fear parent, etc. Types of teachers, types of coaches, types of people in high school. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, aren't we engaging rather directly in putting things into stereotypes? Yeah, we are, but there's truth in stereotypes. That's why they're comforting. I'm not asking you to degrade a particular group. I'm asking you to have a little bit of fun here. Just give it a try. Give it a try. Every time I've ever taught this lesson, I go back to one of the first days that I ever taught classification, and that was at St. Cloud State back in the 80s. I can barely summon those students' faces. It's getting to be a long time ago. It's getting bad, This is over 25 years ago. And I recall once doing this exact thing that I proposed to you. Write a paper, put something in a classification, and list these strategies or make up your own. And I remember a paper that I got once on fast food restaurants, okay? It did nothing, all right? It did absolutely nothing. There was a paragraph on Hardee's, there was a paragraph on Burger King, and I think a paragraph on McDonald's. And I read the paper, and this is back when I had a little more trouble celebrating whatever students try to do with writing. And I think I was kind of hard on the student, Maybe I was trying to make a name for myself, whatever. And maybe I gave it a B, maybe I gave it a C. But the student was not satisfied with that grade. He came to me, and I'm sitting there in my Zubaz and my righteous mullet, and he said, I want to rewrite the paper. I said, okay, why don't you find a new topic? Try a new topic. This is just really doesn't do an awful lot. It doesn't achieve a lot rhetorically. I've been to these restaurants. He said, nope, I'm going to rewrite the paper, and it's going to be on this. I said, good luck, good luck rewriting this essay. I'll read whatever it is you write. Well, you know what? It was one of the more dramatic revisions I've seen in all my days of reading student writing. And I took that second paper, and it was a serious improvement. And I'll tell you why. In the first paper, the student neglected to tell me that he worked at McDonald's, okay? This is in the 80s. He did not tell me that he wore that outfit, that he wore the headset, that he stood above that stainless steel counter while America just came at him in a stream, okay? And all of a sudden I've got a brand new paper, not classifying types of fast food restaurants, but types of customers that come into a McDonald's in St. Cloud, Minnesota, around 1984-85. All of a sudden, I've got a paper that I can look for myself in. Customer number one was the customer that I'm not. That's the customer that stands in line, gets to the front, knows exactly what they want, and how much exchange they're going to get back for their $5 bill. I kept reading and I realized, man, I am customer number two. I'm the nightmare customer at McDonald's. I'm the customer that stands in line, looks around, doesn't have any idea what I want, and then when I get to the front of the line, I look at the McMenu, and I'm thinking, what do I want? Do I want a McWater? Do I want a McPop? Do I want a cheeseburger? I can't make up my McMind, and I just slow everything down. I was customer number two. Now, this student was a little hard on senior citizens, but that is definitely customer number three. Customer number three was the customer who came in, ordered a senior citizen, got a cup of coffee, and then just sat in the booth for like 2 hours watching the help, right? So even though he was a little rough on the senior citizen, I could at least look for myself in the paper. And it also had the human aspect too. There was some humanity in it. I found out that I was definitely not customer number one, classification-wise, but I was most definitely customer number two, with, of course, the hope to someday be customer number three, drinking coffee, sitting in that booth and just staring at the help and being weird, edgy, awkward. This is your mission in the next week and a half. Comp 1, Section 74. I'll post up the assignment and content, and start looking around the world that you live in, wherever you are. Maybe the world where you work, maybe the town that you live in, maybe thinking of something current or something from your past. Use these strategies that I'll also list in content with the assignment, and put something into a classification and have a little bit of fun. You'll fall into a few traps. You're going to want to give them cutesy names, each group, and that's okay. Go for it. Have some fun. And I also, just to conclude, I can't prove to you that I wore Zubaz. Those Zubaz have gone the way of all Zubaz, but since you doubt that I had a righteous mullet, check this out. Can you believe it? What was I thinking? It's like the line in Miłosz. The history of my errors, the natural history of my errors would fill many volumes. That mullet is one of them. Good luck!